Welcome to the Unpause session. Today we have the Unpause session again, and this is about learning and embracing and thriving, particularly for those with metastatic breast cancer. However, whatever we learn here is also for all those who have breast cancer, whether it's early or it is metastatic breast cancer. I'm Ranjit Kaur. I'm the president of Breast Cancer Welfare Association Malaysia, and I'm also the a breast cancer survivor since 1998. Today, we will have a 1 hour session. We have two very interesting speakers. Now, this particular session, Unpause, which we are having every Saturday, is actually supported by Pfizer Malaysia. And we are very thankful to Pfizer Malaysia for enabling us to have these sessions, which are educational for us and also supportive for us to be able to rehabilitate ourselves and to learn a lot of things that we can in order to cope and manage our lives after breast cancer. So the talk for today is a lot to do with finances. It's mainly to do with coping and with and managing financial challenges that people face when they experience breast cancer. And the first speaker will be Associate Professor Dr. Nirmala Bhoo-Pathy, who is a public health medicine specialist from the Department of Social and Preventive Medicine at University Malaya. We also have another very interesting speaker, Dr. Sri Ganesh Muthiah, who is a public health physician at University Putra Malaysia. His topic will be Are jobs available after breast cancer and managing jobs or even career after breast cancer. He's one of the few pioneers when it comes to this area of jobs and employment. Now, today we have these two very interesting speakers who will give you a lot of insight into issues surrounding finances as well as jobs. So without further ado, may I invite Associate Professor Dr. Nirmala Bhoo-Pathy to speak on coping with and managing financial challenges after breast cancer. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you, Ranjit. Thank you so much to BCWA for this opportunity. I hope that all of you will benefit from my talk today. So I have been given the task of talking about coping with financial challenges, and I thought that it would be useful for us to cover through 4 topics today. And the first one is managing finances during cancer diagnosis and treatment, and some tips on overcoming financial challenges. Number 3, claiming medical insurance for cancer care. And 4, finding financial support that's presently available in Malaysia. Okay, so managing finances during cancer diagnosis and treatment. So before I even get to there, I would like to introduce this new concept. People who are living with cancer, who have been diagnosed with cancer, we often talk about treatment toxicity. And recently, about just less than 10 years ago, there was this new term that has been coined called financial toxicity, because we started realizing that apart from cancer and its treatment leading to patients suffering from physical side effects, people also suffer from financial side effects. So let me introduce to this concept of financial toxicity. So how do we define? There are many ways to define. So what we normally say, if it's a family or an individual have to spend in excess, that it reaches a catastrophic level that may endanger the family's financial well-being, then we call it that they have made catastrophic expenditures. And within the context that we have been working previously, we say that families, when they spend more than 30% of their total household income for cancer-related expenses, then we say that they have incurred catastrophic expenditures or financial catastrophe, which we can say that also represents financial toxicity. So this is a pretty old study that we had done previously in Malaysia, where we recruited patients with all types of cancers. And what was striking is that we wanted to see, of all people who have been diagnosed with cancer and have gone through the first year with treatment and so on, how much did they spend out of pocket? How much did the family spend? And did this expenditure constitute catastrophic spending, where they spend more than 30% or 1/3 of their household income? So in this study, what we found that within a first year of diagnosis, where all the cancer therapies tend to be expensive. In Malaysia, 1 in 2 cancer patients end up incurring catastrophic expenditures, or we can say financial toxicity. We also looked at different hospitals. We also looked at different hospitals. We looked at Ministry of Health. We looked at patients who were diagnosed in Ministry of Education. That means those university hospitals, and also private patients. And what we see is people spend out of pocket, and there are many reasons why they would spend out of pocket. One, they can spend due to medical costs, for instance, cancer treatment, medical aids, inpatient care, and so on. But people also, a small proportion also spend on complementary and alternative medicine, supplements, acupuncture, you can name it, things that many of you are already familiar with. But also, a lot of people spend on non-medical costs, such as transportation and so on. I'll cover that in a bit. But basically, from this slide, the take-home message is financial toxicity is pretty common following cancer in Malaysia. So, what are the consumption expenditures that cancer patients have before cancer diagnosis? Before the cancer diagnosis, we spend on housing. This applies to everyone: housing, water, utility, transport, education, food and beverages. Some people engage in alcoholic beverages, tobacco, household equipment, communication, and the list is all things which we are very used to. And of course, we also spend some money on health. But then, what happens after a cancer diagnosis? So on top of things that I've shown earlier, now we have this medical costs and we have this non-medical costs. So medical costs are things that you spend while being in hospital, seeing doctors, purchase of drugs, medical supplies, special equipments, all that goes under medical costs. But what people often forget is there's also this non-medical cost, which can be something that we don't talk about very often. Transporting to the hospital, finding places to stay while getting treatment for your family member who came with you. Some people have to pay extra for childcare. So this is something that also leads to people going into financial difficulties. And so going back to the study that we did, at 1 year after cancer diagnosis, we found that families where they have spent following cancer, about 51% or 1 in 2 families were affected financially, where they had to make catastrophic expenditures due to cancer-related payments. And the important message from the study is, remember I was talking about medical and non-medical costs. While many of us tend to think about only medical costs, which is of course very important, non-medical cancer services were also an important driver that pushed a lot of families into making catastrophic payments. This is especially true in the public hospitals. And in the study, we also found that some families were actually impoverished, where because of all these expenses that they incurred throughout the 1 year after cancer diagnosis, while the whole family appeared to be not in poverty, but when we extract the costs that they have spent, the family actually fell below the national poverty line. And this is very silent, because on the surface, it may look like the patients are doing well, but because of this excessive spending, they have actually been silently pushed into a lower poverty threshold. That means they are actually deemed poor in Malaysia, right? And we also found that a lot of the families, about 47% of families, are unable to make necessary household payments. Remember the cost that we were talking about: your food bill, utility bill, children's education, and so on. So cancer is a real problem financially in Malaysia as well. So besides that particular study that we have actually done, we also looked at financial needs and challenges, particularly in breast cancer patients. So the previous study that I was talking about covered many other cancers. This is specific to a study where we only focus on women with breast cancer. And when we spoke to our women, like narratives and so on, we generally realized that financial needs following breast cancer can be divided into a few sections. First is the health costs. And health costs, like I've already laid out, we already said what are the health costs, but what are the issues with the health costs? Why people have troubles? What are the important thing that we found is a lot of women have poor insurance knowledge, right? And this poor insurance knowledge is not something that just happened at the point where they were diagnosed. Even when they had purchased their policy, they did not have good knowledge of their insurance. What is their insurance all about? Is there a coverage? Is there a cancer coverage? Some of our patients didn't even know whether they had life insurance or is it really a medical insurance, right? And besides that, there were a lot of people who were underinsured. So that means they had insurance, yes, they felt safe, but when they were hit by cancer, they realized that the payments that they had to make were beyond what was covered in the insurance. So they were quick to reach the limit for their insurance coverage. Then they had to bring out money from their own pockets, from their family members, and so on. And also, a lot of patients brought up this issue about they were struggling with reimbursement policies. So while some insurance policies where the patients get diagnosed and they don't have to fork out money from their own pocket, some insurance policies, sometimes it happens that patients have to pay first and claim later. And this became a problem. A lot of women told us the stories about how, yes, the money was going to be returned to them later on, they may be reimbursed. But the problem is they have to have money first to make the payments. And this turned out to be a big problem. And of course, there are also other aspects which are not covered. Some women need to go for mastectomy. They would like to have breast reconstructive surgery, but the insurance does not cover that because breast reconstructive surgery, many of the insurance companies deem that as plastic surgery when it's actually not. So these are problems. And also a lot of patients actually said that they would like to spend on traditional and complementary medicine, and they have their own personal reasons. So some of the women will say that they wanted to have a better quality of life because some of the treatment that they took helped them cope with the side effects from treatment. And these are things which are presently not covered in health costs. So how are we going to, help our women with breast cancer? And also, there are also other things like non-health costs. And like I said earlier, like daily living, transportation, and even and the contrary to what people think, we normally say that when women get diagnosed with breast cancer, it's because they are from a lower income household, which is actually not true from our stories with patients. Even those with middle income, those from higher income household, they struggle because when they get diagnosed, who's going to teach their children, who is going to manage their household? So they might need to get extra help, and all this can be very expensive. These are stories that came from our patients, and that was an eye-opener for many of us. And the third aspect that people also hardly talk is about employment and earnings, how cancer affects people's employment and earnings. I know Dr. Sri Ganesh is going to cover this, but these are stories that came from our patients. A lot of them had not only job loss, where they had to leave the job, but some of them may have been able to retain their jobs, but they suffered from income losses. And then there's this difficulty to get workplace flexibility, where there's a lack of understanding at the workplace. And also there may be discrimination not only from the co-workers, but also from the employers, right? And also the other hidden thing is this employment effect does not only is detrimental to the patients themselves, but also their caregivers. Sometimes the caregivers their jobs because they have to juggle taking care of the family member who has had cancer. And these are often things which are overlooked, right? And a lot of patients actually brought up these issues about financial assistance. They of course, they can get informal financial resources from families, borrowing from friends. But they also highlighted that EPF and SOCSO, a lot of them struggled with eligibility. And then they kept on saying that there were too much of red tape and there was transparency and efficiency issues in getting application for financial resources. And an important thing that a lot of people, our patients, brought up is this lack of financial navigation. So I will talk about this financial navigation a bit later on. Let me just go on with So we have talked about the problems. So how do we overcome these financial challenges? So when we talk about health costs, what are the things that people can do? I think it's important that we start now saying to everyone, maybe for some of us, maybe it's too late, but what the message that needs to go is everyone needs to understand their insurance policies at the stage where applying and ensure that they know what they're covered for and check on with have regular talks with your agents and so on. right? So that you know what is covered, what is not covered, and protect yourself from taking steps which may put yourself and your family in financial difficulties later on. And another important thing is keep on communicating with your doctors. Don't feel shy talking about costs. I know it can get a bit, it may sound, some people may think that, talking about costs makes them feel uncomfortable, but it's your rights. You should start communicating with your doctors right from the beginning about costs, telling them about your concerns, and ask about price of medication and treatment, ask for advice on deciding suitable treatments. And if cost is an issue, be very transparent about that. And should so avoid this lack of transparency of information between patient and doctor for whatever reason, right? And what about the non-health costs? The non-health costs, return to work, it improves the quality of life. So we will encourage patients to return to work. So this is something again that Dr. Sri Ganesh will probably touch on. So I won't talk much about this. But there needs to be a constant communication with the employers, and whether to disclose or not is something of another issue, right? A lot of patients told us that they feel scared to disclose about their diagnosis to their employers. And right now, sad to say, we do not have strong employment protection policies in Malaysia. So a lot of the fear is actually not unwarranted. And for people who are staying far away, we do have halfway houses. There are some nice NGOs doing good work where you have accommodations built in to help people who have to travel from far away to come and get their treatment in the city centers where most of the cancer centers are located, right? So there are some options available presently. And financial assistance. So make changes in lifestyle in terms of spending. So this may sound over simplistic, but to be honest, in overseas, there are some experts who are engaged to help patients to decide how they can leverage and how they can change their lifestyle and make wise decisions. And we have this sort of financial advisors abroad. And at the moment, we do not have such services here, but that is what I am going to talk about during our financial navigation. And participate in financial navigation programs. So traditionally, when people have difficulties, financial difficulties, what happens is that we direct them to places where they can get some financial assistance. But that is not financial navigation. Financial navigation means sitting with patients, helping them make financial decisions in terms of choosing treatment, how to make wise decisions about planning about their future, their jobs, and so on. So for this, it's not the job of the patient alone to go and seek that. We are trying to get health services to start this sort of programs, and we have no such programs in Malaysia, financial navigation programs. And it's one of the key work that my team is planning in University of Malaya. So right now, of course, we do not have any formal financial navigation programs for people with cancer, but we are in the process of trying to make this happen. And what can you all do pertaining to this? I think you all, when asked what needs to be done for cancer, I think rather than just asking for funding for drugs and so on, which is, I think, important, but more importantly, I think is for people living with cancer and their family members to ask for things like financial navigation programs, things that can help people make better decisions when they're struck with cancer. How do they use that limited insurance amount that they have wisely? How do they make wise use of their insurance limits or whatever assistance? All this, there'll be this one-stop place where all this can be done with professionals who are able to help. For that, we need some push from the patient's end as well to make things matter in Malaysia. So I'm calling out all of you to ask questions and ask the government. We want these sort of programs in Malaysia as well. And claiming medical insurance, I'll just briefly, I'm not an expert in medical insurance, but we have done some work to come up with some what can you do. So there are generally a few types of personal medical insurance policies. So of course you have this hospital and surgical insurance. So usually it's tied to a medical card, and there's a reimbursement of actual medical expenses incurred in the event of hospital treatment, and coverage period may be limited. So this is something that may require renewal. So this is one of the options that often patients have. And most often, many people have this critical illness insurance. It terminates upon a full payout claim. And when a critical illness has been confirmed, you will get a lump sum of money. And this can be helpful. It can be helpful because it can help you cope with additional expenses when you are living with any of the illnesses that has been listed. So cancer is one of those. So this is another option that we have in the country at the moment. Disability income insurance so covers a portion of the income in the event that the policyholder is displaced for work when stricken with an illness. So this is when people are unable to perform their work. And there's a lump sum insured, and its quality depends on the severity of the disability. So one of the disability income insurance actually comes from SOCSO, right? And we also have hospital income insurance. Not all policies cover this, but in case some of it, that's why you have to be aware of all this to see whether if you have this sort of insurance, check whether you are eligible for a hospital income insurance. That means on days when you get hospitalized, you do get some form of payment for each day of hospitalization. So knowing that these options are available, maybe you would like to check for those who don't know whether this is covered in your insurance. And of course, there's now this comprehensive medical insurance are becoming very popular. Different types of insurance are bundled together and make sure that people are wholly insured against many incidences. But what happens is it depends on insurance companies. Different companies have different sort of bundles, and the payment may be the premiums may be high, right? So you have to check. So the more coverage, that means the more premium is paid. So the best way is actually to get insurance when people are healthy. So even if you were to advise some other people whom you know, then get an insurance while you're young and make sure you know your insurance coverage, what it covers for. Do you need anything more comprehensive? Please invest in medical insurance. So these are just the companies. I'm not promoting any companies, but these are some of the companies where they offer insurance here. And how do you make claims? Some of the important points, I'm not going to give you it's just some tips, right? So one of the things is call insurance company before receiving the treatment, just to check whether your treatment is covered and is the hospital in the company is in the panel. Because if it's not in the panel, then you may have to pay first and claim later, and that can be a trouble, right? And the doctors and specialists will need to fill and sign claim form. So this may be subject to some fee that is not covered by insurance because you need to ask for a report, right? And stay in contact with your insurance company or your agent and on the status of your claim. And most bills actually are paid. If you have a medical card, they are directly settled by the hospitals. It's only in instances where a particular doctor or a particular hospital is not in the panel, then you may come across a situation where you have to pay first and claim later. And like I said, we have already in our study patients complaining that this is a problem. So try to be wise when you're making these decisions. And if you're diagnosed with disability that incurs claimable expenses, you should do the following. Give a written notice to your insurance company as soon as possible or within 30 days of the treatment that is received. Attach the following: the original bills, physician's report, physician's summary of the course of treatment, and referral. And if you have to make some procurement and so on, you must quickly act and let your insurance company know. Don't delay, because then it becomes your problem. So always make sure that you are timely. And I know in many instances it may not be so straightforward, especially when a person is being diagnosed with cancer. So that's why I was talking about financial navigation. When we have financial navigation services, we actually have personnel who are able to help patients and their families to do this sort of work, the paperwork, filing claims, helping patients navigate the complex mechanisms involved in claiming of insurance. And benefits are usually payable if all bills have been submitted and agreed upon. So you don't be surprised if some of your bills are challenged by the insurance company. These are things that may happen, so don't be shocked. That's why it's wise to speak to your doctors and your hospitals before doing this. And finding financial support. Where do you go and get financial support? So currently we have SOCSO. And SOCSO, like I said, is for the disability claim. And at present, based on what we have heard from our patients, there are some difficulties, but if you are lucky and you manage to get a good, like a letter from your physician, treating physician, to say that you are disabled as a result of the disease, then you will benefit from this invalidity scheme. And you might be eligible for this invalidity pension, right? And usually the qualifying period is 50 to 65% of the average assumed monthly wage. And usually a minimum pension of 475 ringgit is provided. And also there's this invalidity grant. This is ILAT, right? It's a pension ILAT. So this is again from SOCSO as well, equivalent to the contributions paid by the employee and employer under the invalidity scheme, and you get an interest. This is only a one-time lump sum payment as opposed to the disability scheme. And attendance allowance, right? Certified, and sometimes people get incapacitated that they require personal assistance from another person. Though this is usually a recommendation by the medical board, SOCSO's medical board. And that amount is usually about 500 ringgit per month. And there's also survivor's pension. So if the insured person was receiving some benefit from SOCSO, and in the event that they have passed off, so irrespective of the cause of death, the employee's survivor or the employee's relative, usually the spouses and children who are less than 18, they may be able to get the payment to be. And SOCSO also have facilities for physical or vocational rehabilitation, or provides facilities for that. And there's also funeral benefit and education benefit. These are all from SOCSO. And we also have EPF, so individual withdrawal from the actual medical cost or the entire savings that comes under account 2. So if you are a person who are in employment and has got an EPF, then this is another option to think about. Or you can also do joint withdrawals, applied amount, or you can actually do an entire savings in account 2. It can all be taken up, right? And there are also other NGOs. So all of you know Breast Cancer Welfare Association. So BCWA, apart from psychosocial support and giving public awareness, they do provide non-medical aids for cancer patients. There's a recovery and information kit called the Confi Kit. I'm sure Ranjit and her team will be able to tell you more about this. And there's also subsidy for breast prosthesis, mastectomy bras for women who have undergone mastectomy. These are things from BCWA. And another NGO is MAGNA. MAGNA, which is a Majlis Cancer National. They have bursary assistance programs. So they do offer financially challenged patients, most of which are people who are in the B40 group with a monthly allowance. And they are able to also support medical equipments, medication, ancillary items to people living with cancer. And some of the things that they support is non-formulary drugs. That means things are not presently not covered under the Ministry of Health's Blue Book, and prostheses, chemopods, and also things, daily items like diapers, liquid food. So this is another alternative for people living with cancer, right? And also we have all these religious organizations. So Baitul Mal, you have where they have the bantuan perubatan or medical assistance. And these are mostly for low-income families. That means defined by this B40 group. So there is some, it's not automatically everyone can. It is by case basis and also by availability. And we also have other religious organizations like the Pantai Baptist Church. They also have a cancer support fund. They assist needy individuals by funding their medical treatment. And besides financial support, they also have all this professional support where they talk about cancer-related topics and so on. And we also have another NGO called Breast Cancer Foundation. So they do have a patient fund. They provide financial assistance for people with breast cancer for the purpose of medical treatment, financing, medication, and personal needs. And we also have the National Cancer Society. They don't directly provide funds or money, I would say, but they have support groups, and they also do all these wig rentals, for women who need wigs. Psychological counseling, nutritional counseling, and this is where they also have all these halfway homes for children with cancer and so on. And they also have things to boost the overall well-being, like wellness classes and so on. And of course, in all the government hospitals, we also have this Jabatan Kerja Sosial Perubatan. Again, these are things which are limited, pretty limited to people who fall under the B40 group, the low-income households, right? They provide financial assistance to cancer patients, but it's usually a one-off basis. And these are the things that we have at present. So before I end this presentation, one thing that I would like all of you to bear in mind is that apart from thinking about, asking for more funds for cancer drugs and so on, I think it's time for patients and patient support groups to also think about what other services that they need, making them financially wiser. And one of the things that key take-home message is, please look out and ask for financial navigation programs. Maybe I'll come in future and say what kind of financial navigation programs that we can plan for Malaysian patients. And maybe I would like feedback from patients and the families themselves on what sort of services that they may need in the near future. So I'm leaving all of you with that thought in mind, financial navigation for people living with cancer. Thank you so much for listening. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Prof. Nirmala. I think that was a fantastic session. You actually opened our eyes with regards to issues surrounding financial challenges. And I think one of the things I learned is not just B40 group that has got financial challenges, but also the others. And I think that with the pandemic interruption, we may have the M40 suffering much more as well. So maybe we can come back to it later during the Q&A session. And thank you so very much for your precious time. I know you are tight this weekend. You've got family commitments, but you have made time for us. So thanks very much for that. Do stand by, and we will now move on to the next speaker. We are inviting now another speaker, Dr. Sri Ganesh Muthiah, who is actually a rare species of doctors who talks about and covers the area of jobs after breast cancer. So he's going to talk today about, are jobs available after breast cancer, and managing jobs or even career after breast cancer. He's had very good experience in this area and expertise. And today we are fortunate to have him here to speak to us about issues surrounding jobs and career. Over to you, Dr. Sri Muthiah, and thank you so very much for speaking today during this session.
A very good afternoon, Ms. Ranjit, and thank you very much, first of all, for the kind invitation. Before I move on, I would also like to thank Prof. Nirmala for your very informative presentation earlier. And very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, this topic has been very close to my heart, speaking about cancer and employment. Okay, while we are waiting for the slides, probably a little bit of I'd like to introduce how I got involved in this area of how I ended up, or I'm still very passionately involved in helping our cancer patients for employment and job opportunities. So it was in about 2010, 2011. I was posted as a medical officer at the oncology department at Hospital Kuala Lumpur. So this is where I learned a great deal of insight of the financial catastrophe about among our cancer patients. So I still remember during my morning walk, my usual morning rounds, besides the usual questions like how are they doing, how are the side effects and things, I was very much interested to know how are they supporting themselves. Like a random patient, I would be asking, Pachi, how are you? Since we know how long is the patient going to be in the hospital, for example, like 2 or 3 months for his radiotherapy. So naturally, I was interested, how is he supporting his family? I'm sure he has to pay for his house, probably for his vehicle loan, to support his school-going children, stuff like that. So this is when I actually got to know that we are if in the preventive in epidemiology, if we can divide according to primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention, we are not concentrating much on the tertiary prevention, which talks about the rehabilitation, financial toxicity, how do we improve patients' quality of life. So I must say we have got a very good standard of care in terms of primary and secondary prevention of cancer, which encompasses the health education, screening, and all the other things that comes along. But when we talk about tertiary prevention, which is in essence the quality of life, how do we get back our patients back to the society, especially in terms of vocational rehabilitation, which is about employment. I realized that we did not have we did not have an NGO or a dedicated body to speak on behalf of these patients. Just to prove scientifically, I was very interested to know what were the prevalence like, how many of them are actually affected by these employment. We conducted a very a preliminary study during that time, and we found that employment was indeed a positive predictor for good quality of life among breast cancer patients. Meaning, if we have two groups of breast cancer patients, one without employment and one with an employment, patients with an employment had a better quality of life compared to the other group. And the missing link here is the employment. So if that is the problem, I've always been intrigued to find out why and why are we not doing anything about it. So long story short, it somehow brought me to form an NGO called Cancer Fly. It's actually a combination of cancer and butterfly. So butterfly is supposed to signify freedom, and I would like to advocate financial freedom to these patients. So that's how Cancer Fly came about. And through this Cancer Fly, and with the blessings and support with many NGOs around, we have done quite a bit of programs to help educate and get the employers involved, and how do we help our cancer patients back into vocational rehabilitation. So we will move on to this slide now. So this was the types of levels of prevention I was briefly mentioning earlier, and then now this is the we are now a few questions that was given to me, and I will address them one by one. So number one, are jobs available after breast cancer? To answer this question, we need to look at the cancer employment metrics holistically. So if we look here, upon the diagnosis of cancer, which there is a triangle there, so patients can experience a loss of employment at any point of time. It could be either before or after their treatment, and in the event that these patients are going to go in a remission or a relapse, they can, there's always a chance of them for them to succumb to the illness. The missing link here in this diagram is actually the red arrow pointing up from remission to employment. We are actually unable to complete the circle here, and I strongly believe if only the three parties in the box, government, employee, and the employer, can come together and find various ways. In fact, there are like many ways we can actually help to help our patients who are on remission to get them back into employment. So in a gist, we can if we can only concentrate our efforts in these three levels, what the government can do, what the employee can do, and what the employer can do. Even I must say, even among the employees of our patients, they do not have much awareness. Many of them think that it is their fault of getting diagnosed with cancer, and they wouldn't want to speak up about their employment rights. this is where I noticed, or we do notice, many of our patients, they experience job retrenchment and loss of job right upon their diagnosis of cancer. Next slide, please. So now I'll touch on what should I do if I have to stop from my work, and how do I manage my job career after. To answer these questions, we first need to understand the journey of a patient being diagnosed with breast cancer. This is very important because many of us, many of our patients, they think that a diagnosis is like a date, nothing positive. But I so do understand this is going to be. Yeah, so the journey of our cancer patients, right? We have to make them understand as the treating physicians, as doctors. First of all, we have to tell them that it's very important for every individual patient to know the timeline, how many months or how many weeks are they going to be on treatment. So with that, it will be much easier for them to plan their employment journey. It is just like in the future, gone are those days like 3 decades ago when we have a poor survival rate of breast cancer. For now, our 5-year survival rate has improved tremendously over the past 30 years. And hopefully in the future, we can take the diagnosis of cancer just like any other illnesses, whereby the patients are just going to be just like, for example, if we have an upper respiratory tract infection, if the patients are going to be subjected to a dose of a particular regime of antibiotics of 7 days. We would like to think, or we would like to envision that in the future, patients are just going to be on that particular chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and that's it. They're going to be back on the ground, going back to the society, just as how it's going to be as normal as it was before. So keeping that in mind, first of all, it is the doctor's role as well as the patient's. It is very important for both parties to understand the timeline of their treatment. It's not going to be a dead end after the moment they have been diagnosed. So moving on from here, next slide, please. So in the breast cancer journey, upon diagnosis, uh, the oncologist or the surgeon, the treating physicians will actively be involved in explaining what kind of treatment. So here we have post-surgery. So post-surgery would be chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and of course we have other immunotherapy, hormonal therapy, and these treatment comes into play. So in terms of employment, as far as work is involved, we need to differentiate how long are the patients going to be actively involved in hospital treatment, and how soon can they actually go back to their employment. So understanding these timeline will greatly help these patients in talking to their employer, in seeking if they could get a 6 months leave or a 6 months either paid or unpaid leave. I was actually very surprised when I got to know some of the employers have got do not have much knowledge about these the cancer patients. They tend to think, we do not have the exact number of people, but those who have been involved in our programs, that we go around and giving them awareness on cancer and their relationship with their employees. They have told us that they tend to think that the moment a patient has been diagnosed with cancer, it's like they are unable to get back into their own self, and hence their productivity will not be as good as how they are pre-cancer stage. So this is actually very sad, because I feel that we have to get these employers informed. We need to get them informed and educated about the different types of cancers, and each different types of cancers have actually got different survival rate, and that too, it could be further classified or further stratified into different stages, different other social demographics which could contribute towards their survival rate. So understanding this is very, very important for them to decide whether they want to give this patient a longer leave, or maybe they can tell them that, okay, I will give you a 6-month leave. Maybe you can come back to you can come back to us, and then we will see how, rather than a blanket retrenchment from the time they have been diagnosed. Can we move on? Next slide, please. Sorry, yeah. So this was one of the events that I would like to share. We managed to get Jobs Malaysia, which is an agency, which is a government agency under the Ministry of Human Resources. So we thought that, okay, Jobs Malaysia is basically a portal where they help patients to they help regular individuals to obtain employment. So how if we speak to them and try to create a special track for cancer patients? And we succeeded in our first organizing the first program. We call that Carnival Kerjaya Ken Merdeka. So Ken Merdeka the program was held in conjunction with last year's National Day. It was supposed to be an annual event, but unfortunately we couldn't do it this year due to the pandemic. So last year, the Ken Merdeka, it is supposed to provide freedom, Merdeka, freedom, financial freedom. So with that concept in mind, we wanted to we organize this event, and this is the first ever event, which was which first ever career carnival event especially for cancer patients, which is held in Malaysia. And we at that time we thought that we were going to do it like very regularly, but unfortunately due to the pandemic we couldn't proceed that idea. But nevertheless, we have had the commitment from the undertaking from Jobs Malaysia, saying that they have actually Cancerfly have actually collaborated with them to create a special track, a very special track just for cancer patients. Meaning, if any cancer patients have got job issues, employment, if they would like to submit their CV, we will help them to pass their resume to Jobs Malaysia, and they have their database, and we will try our best to job match them as fast as possible. So these are the few initiatives that we try to do just to get the ball rolling on with regards to employment and cancer patients. So in this event, we managed to secure about I was pleasantly surprised to get about 500 vacancies, out of which at least about 30 to 40% was actually they were interviewed successfully and were subsequently called for further screening at their respective companies. Next please. Yeah, so this is just the other before we do these kind of career carnivals, it was very important for us to speak to the employers, because for us to get the employers on board to come on that day to open up their vacancies, we need to ask them what's actually in their mind. Do they have any queries? And true enough, they had a lot of questions to ask. We were surprised. We were actually surprised to know that some of them even thought that cancer is a communicable disease, in which if one employee gets, the other employee can also is contagious. So these are the questions that we had to break, and we had to explain to them. Among the very important point that we felt that we really wanted to share with them was, again, as I mentioned earlier, is regarding the survival rate. They tend to think that every cancer is the same. So we explain very simple example would be like if you're going to compare someone with thyroid cancer and liver cancer. So someone who's got a thyroid cancer has been documented scientifically, has got a better prognosis. So in terms of employability, probably if down the line, if some thyroid cancer patient is supposed to come and ask them for employment opportunities, they may want to keep that patient in mind for to be recruited. We do understand that not that the employer is trying to be harsh or trying to be not so nice in rejecting these applications, but we do understand from their point of view, they would be thinking in terms of what if this patient gets a recurrence, who's going to bear the financial insurance, hospitalization, and those things comes here. So it's not a very straightforward matter that we have been trying to break. It's a big bubble. Everything comes with like a lot of questions, a lot of challenges in the way. So from the employer's point of view, they would be thinking, yes, I would really like to help these cancer patients to give employment. We truly understand that they need some form of assistance. We want to help their family, but then again, we are not a charitable organization. How if this patient some recurrent insurance? It links up a lot of people here. Hopefully, in the future, that we are able to create a better pathway for these patients. We can move on. Next slide, please. Speaking about employer-employee relationship, in Bahasa Malaysia, we have something called tak kenal maka tak cinta. So if they don't understand, then if they don't know you, they wouldn't understand you. So a little bit of my limited experience speaking to employers. When we go and advocate, we ask these employers, for example, company A, can you give us a list of your vacancies, and would you mind offering some of your vacancies to our pool of cancer patients? So we realized that if I'm speaking to the HR manager, yeah, the manager would be most certain to respond positively if that particular person, that HR manager, has some experience handling or dealing with cancer patients on a very personal basis. For example, if that person or the family or his close friends has been diagnosed with cancer and probably affected by employment issues, then they will be very, very receptive. They'll be like, oh yeah, I totally agree with you, doctor. Actually, my adik punya saudara and all these, so I also had a cancer and they also had some employment issues. I think thank you for coming up. I mean, thank you for offering this opportunity for me to help out. So here, these are the vacancies. You can advertise among your cancer patients. But if the scenario is the other way around, if at all the patient or the person I'm speaking to or we are dealing with do not have any background or they do not understand, then it is a very, very difficult task in making them understand, to be compassionate, to put themselves in the patient's shoes and to feel, to be empathetic, how cancer patients' life, especially during treatment, they have already been going through a lot of mental, physical side effects, and moreover financial. So this is like a huge burden for these patients. So then this is where we need to, as Prof mentioned earlier, we need a very strong team of comprising of NGOs and also patient advocates and also the patients to bring these employment issues. Right now, employment issues are very, 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 very not spoken much, especially with regards to cancer patients. We had this idea to bring one of the other initiatives that we have done was also to speak to the Human Resource Ministry in terms of taxation and incentives. So there is a clause under the taxation where employers who hire OKU disabled persons, they are subjected to benefit or to enjoy a double tax deduction, meaning if they are paying their salary of 2,000 ringgit, so times 12 would be 24,000. So at the end of the year, they can claim tax amounting to about 48,000 ringgit. So it's double. So instead of 24, it's 48,000. So the employer has some benefit, not benefit, it's a win-win situation. But however, that proposal, which was given sometime last year, we were anticipating much for a very positive. We were promised that that proposal would be looked into and announced during last year's budget, but somehow it didn't materialize. Again, we tried this year, again, nothing so far, but we are still positive. We hopefully one day we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We want the double taxation as equivalent to an OKU patient. This is when we are able to encourage a lot of other employers to take cancer patients as their employees. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just to share some of these engagements that we have done earlier. This was in UPM. That was among these Jabatan Tenaga Kerja, which is another agency under Kementerian Sumber Manusia. Next, please. Yes, this is the MyScan 2018. It's called the MyScan 2018, released by the Ministry of Health. We've got this 5-year relative survival of the major 15 cancers in Malaysia, so stratified according to stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is a very informative chart table where we can explain to these patients the different types of cancers and their survival rate. And based on this, we leave it to them. It's up to them whether to call these patients for further interview, for them to be recruited into jobs or not. Next, please. Do I give up pursuing my career? What I wanted to say is it's a very individual decision based on the patients. I just want them to know, I just want all of us to know that life after the diagnosis of cancer, it's not only employment. They can concentrate on other things. A lot of our patients that we have helped them in terms of jobs. They were not keen to be employed as an employee. They wanted to start up their own business. So under CancerFly, we also started this thing called Can Bazaar, in which we provide them a free space of business at any social events or any programs, seminars, conferences. So we speak to the organizers of the conferences and get a few tables, and we invite the pool of our cancer patients to run their business for a day or for the whole time of the event which has been running. And we do not charge a single cent. It's free of charge, meaning whatever profit that they get, it's all for them. They do not pay for the booth as in other conventional methods or other conferences. So that was as a take-home message. I would like to share that it's not only about employment. They can also choose to be a self-employed after that. So those things they need to reflect upon themselves before deciding on their path. With that, next slide, please. With that, I've come to the end of my presentation. I'm very happy to share some of these experience, and I look forward for any questions that would like to take from the floor. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Dr. Sri Ganesh, and also thanks to Associate Professor Dr. Nirmala. There are many questions, but we might try and consolidate them. particularly more so for Dr. Sri Muthiah. But before I go to Dr. Sri, there are several questions about jobs because people are really suffering. But I think this is very, very closely linked to financial issues. And also, there are two things why people work. One is finance, and the second thing, of course, to feel that you are contributing to society, to your family, and that you feel your self-esteem as well when you work. Rather than having lost a job. If you lose the job, it's even worse than not having and being employed before. Prof. Nirmala, you were talking about financial navigation. What kind of personnel do you think would be a very good financial navigator for patients if that kind of sort of avenue comes through, and for patients to be alerted beforehand? But I also think that this financial navigation is not just for people who get cancer, but also long before you can get any condition. As we age, we are quite likely to get some kind of a problem in our lifetime. And I think the best places sometimes is also in jobs where people are in their job role, and they can get some kind of financial advice and navigation. Second thing, of course, is the issue of insurance. Many people have not been educated well by the insurance agents when they first bought the insurance, and they thought they were very well covered until they came across this very sudden bad news that they are not covered. So would you like to say a little bit about financial navigation, Prof?
Yeah, thanks, Ranjit, for bringing that up. So financial navigation, what is being done in US is very specific. So it started in the United States, because what happened was in the United States, you have this medic aid, different types of insurance, and people are stuck in between. So that's where a group of nurses, they started getting together and, hire people to help them and get trained. So what happens is somebody from the some insurance experts come down and train these nurses. And after a while, they get well versed that they are able to help people file their claims, to tell which the things that they are eligible, which they are not. So when it comes to things like that, when we want to adopt that kind of system here, it might be a bit different. So what I foresee is we start small, but what we were planning is we start with the people who are from the insurance agencies, the retired people. So I started some mini conversations, but these are things that started before the pandemic. So due to the pandemic, we stopped. But we have spoken to people from the insurance, so we know the kind of people, financial advisors, and people who have retired from insurance services who are able to assist, and they are people who will come and train our staff. So this staff can be a member of an NGO, it can be some nurses who are interested, it can be anyone, but they must be there in-house and doing this as a full-time job. So it's not only about insurance navigation. So this is like a one-stop place where people go and they can get a wide variety of advice. So it's not necessarily insurance. We also will have people from HR companies who want to do some social corporate responsibility tasks, and they will come also train our staff to say what kind of employment, what will happen if you go back. Some of the questions we have in the panel that people have put up in the chat. So we will have that kind of person who will be training one or two staff members. They can be in-house staff members who are placed in hospitals. But the plan that I foresee is we want to start a pilot program, and that is the pilot program where we will call cancer survivors and experts to come forward to say, what are the things that we can start small with? We pilot it. Once it's up and running, such programs, we will give it back to the NGOs to run. Because these are not things that should be run and kept under academic centers, for instance. But to answer your question, health insurance personnel, HR personnel who can help questions related to jobs, but also financial risk advisors. There are also a lot of financial advisors who are freelance, who work in banks. These are people who also will help, what can you do? How can you liquidate some assets and pay off something? And how can you move from a bigger house to a smaller house? Those are things that doctors and nurses are not experts in, but that's how we plan to start. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Interestingly, we have a number of women after breast cancer who actually ended up becoming insurance agents because they realized that there has been a lot of communication misconception about insurance. And in fact, in our own circle of people, we have now some of these ladies who have become insurance advisors, and they're insurance agents as well. And I'm wondering whether you want us to refer them to you, because you could have a good conversation, and it can be done online. These meetings can be done online, and it can continue despite the pandemic, because I think this is a huge issue, as you've seen from the questions. Dr. Sri, I think there are many, many questions for you. People hungry for jobs. People are really fearful of issues about surrounding social stigma, which you spoke about regarding employers, employees. And we do understand sometimes there are places where there's only one clerk working in that whole like mechanic shop or something. And if that clerk goes on MC, there's nobody to continue the work. Sometimes these are practical issues, you know. And also, like, you have those who have got stage 4. We have here SL who has said she's stage 4, and there is no such thing as the cancer being cleared. It is only being controlled, and with regular treatment, continuous treatment, no cure. So will that give her a clean bill of health for jobs? And I was just wondering if you are physically active, mentally alert, why not a job can be given to you, or you could secure a job? So there's this question that says, I'm stage 4 MBC and still going through treatment, and while the oncologists still consider it as a disease being controlled, but not cured. So will she get a clean bill of health for jobs?
Yes. So thank you for your question. It's a very personalized approach that we need to take for these patients. It's not a blanket rule that every stage 4 MBC will be subjected for clean bill or otherwise. Basically, the slide that I shared is actually a very preliminary study that we conducted. So this is a very, very practical question that every patient would want to know. Can they get a good report from their medical doctor to be brought to the employer during their interview? So we created this scoring tool. We called it the G-score. So this G-score is supposed to be an employability scoring tool, whereby we are going to measure the score of every individual patient from a scale of 0 to 12 or 0 to 15. So the higher the score is, the more employable they are supposedly, they're supposed to be. Meaning that the highest scores are those patients who have got better 5-year survival. It factored in all the variables from various studies which have said that younger age patients versus older age patients, hormone positive versus hormone negative, and these are all the variables that were put in. What I would like to highlight here is we need a very personalized evaluation of these patients. So in the future, I hope that by utilizing this employability score, the G score, I envision that the moment we are discharging our patient from the hospital, we will discharge them with this score, so they can bring this piece of medical report to the employer, and to further convince the receiving person that, okay, this patient has been given a good, although the patient has completed their cancer treatment, he or she has a good employability. So that's what we would like to do.
That's another one about insurance, that whether they will be weighed along the same basis as other healthy employees.
Maybe I can take this question.
Yeah, Prof, go ahead.
If employers look past my cancer and employs me, will the health benefits and insurance be the same as other healthy employees? Obviously not. So this depends. It really depends on whether the employer that you go to, will they have insurance coverage? Because not all employers actually offer employer-sponsored insurance for their patients. But if they do, what happens is, when they know that you have cancer, the insurance company will not cover any aspects of cancer or any other complications or disease that arise from cancer, but you will be covered for the other items. which are not caused by cancer. So that's what will happen. So this goes back to the next issue, that most employers are in fact very reluctant to hire people because of these reasons. So, but in some companies where they have policies, they have no issues hiring, then they will cover, but they will not cover the cancer part. So that's how it works presently.
Next question, Dr. Sri, do you want to take that?
Sure.
That's an interesting question. When going for a job interview, when is the best time to tell your potential employer that you are a cancer survivor? You don't want to ruin your chances. How to not let our cancer history be a reason for employers to reject us?
All right. Fortunately or unfortunately, we have to be truthful from the beginning itself. Otherwise, at the end of the form or whatever, there would be a small disclaimer saying that if I were to be found of telling any false information, I can be terminated immediately, or I can, there's other consequences. So we have to be truthful from the beginning itself. If at all to say that yes, I am a cancer survivor, that's what we have to do. So we have to concentrate on the employers' education awareness here, and also our patients. I would say that from the beginning they will have to say that they are a patient themselves.
Can I add?
I would also, I mean, yes, Prof, you go ahead first.
I just want to add to what Dr. Sri Ganesh already said. So if the company gives a form and asks you to fill up, and one of the questions are, have you been ill? And then you have to declare. But there are also instances when there is no such forms. So if they don't ask you, then it's your right to keep quiet. So then you are not breaking the law. So it really depends. If you are being asked, you can never lie. But if you don't, they never ask, then it's not your fault.
I have a different opinion on this actually. If I were to go for an interview, the first thing I'm going to say is I have had cancer before, but I can perform my job just like anyone else. If I'm being employed, it is for my performance, it's for my skills and for my knowledge of my work. All right. So if I'm confident about that, I see no reason why my employer should not employ me. And I should be willing to say, if your insurance doesn't cover my disease and the after effects of my disease, I'm okay. You can cover me for other conditions, but I'm willing to take up the job. So I should be on par with other employees, me to be performing. Now, that employer is going to look at my confidence that I can perform. All right. So I think there is, it has to be a two-way game here from the employer as well as the employee. For the employer to respect me, I need to show the truth. And I would say I had cancer before I can say my name. I want the truth out because I want to educate people as well.
That's very inspiring, Ranjit. I think the confidence goes a long way.
We have another one. Below that is, what sort of document or medical report letter should I seek from doctors treating me upon completion of my treatment to show future employers?
Can I answer?
Yes.
So basically, we only have the medical report for now, which means that the patient's diagnosis would be there in the medical report. So this is where it could create some confusion or some from the employer's point of view, they have been diagnosed with, they are looking at someone who has been diagnosed with breast cancer, colon cancer, and so on. They do not know how employable this cancer patient or these patients are. So this is where hopefully in the future some employability tool to assess this, either in a scale of probably 0 to 10 or 15. It should be designed to give some confidence to the employer. Okay, this has got a higher score of employability. Probably I can move on to the other aspects of the interview, or probably some other evaluation if at all needed. So for now, the only thing to answer this question is we only have a medical report to show the employer.
Have lots of patients being retrenched during chemo treatment, and I am one of them. First diagnosis still okay. When I had a relapse 2 years later, it is not very good. So this is someone I think who's had metastatic breast cancer.
Yeah. Regular, unfortunately, a lot of our patients face this condition. They will be given 2 months or 3 months of pay with immediate effect of their job retrenchment. This is where the employee themselves, we need to look at our rights. But then again, a lot got to do with their status of their employment. Are they permanent? Are they by contract, and so on. A lot of things here I have to stress. I have to, in all honesty, it's a very gray area. They are, first to begin with, they may be scared to go and approach their employer, and this is where there are a lot of issues that, as Prof shared earlier, that we can actually work on in this area. Prof, anything from you, Prof, on this?
I think by rights, a lot of the companies in Malaysia, there is policy, there's cancer leave. So the cancer leave in very good companies, what happens is for the first 6 months, they get full pay, and then the next 6 months, half pay, and another 6 months, no pay. But not all companies are in the position or have the luxury of offering this. And unfortunately, what happens is, while we say that it's not, you are not supposed to get people retrenched while they are on chemo or treatment, but the pandemic has made it worse. So because of the pandemic now, there's no, you can't say that it's unethical, because a company is also suffering. So the pandemic has made things difficult. Otherwise, a lot of the companies tend to have some form of policy, but there is no hard and fast rule on how long is that cancer leave. Is it 18 months in total? Is it some companies offer 6 months? The government of Malaysia offer 1 year. So it varies. So very small companies, unfortunately, there is no line like what Dr. Sri Ganesh has said. So on one side, they are also struggling. So I don't know in what context this has happened to you, but it depends on the company. So if the company has got no policies, then there's nothing much that can be done. But if the company has policies and still have retrenched, they might actually turn it around and say it's because of the pandemic.
Thank you. And we have do jobs that you are helping cancer survivors get cover the higher income category. There are many breadwinners who were previously in senior positions but are worried that they will be discriminated against after completing treatment. Headhunters and offers may not be forthcoming anymore.
Yes, from our pool, we do have patients ranging from the whole from the top down of the job scope. They're from the manager level, from the and also the other staffs. So from the higher income categories, yes, we do have our patients, and but I must say the success rate, as highlighted here, has not been as attractive or as positive as the other patients from whatever whoever patients that we have helped so far.
And Dr. Sri Ganesh, as Prof just now mentioned, it is going to be very difficult times now because of the pandemic as well. But at the same time, I wonder, like, a lower number of foreigners are going to be in this country working, even in higher jobs, higher position jobs, whatever positions there are, because we've had many foreigners working in higher positions who had to return to their countries because of issues regarding the company's financial, because expats are paid much more than locals. And I think that might create some opportunity for locals to take up those jobs as well. So there might be some opportunities there. Sometimes we have challenges, but at the same time, within the challenges, we can find some opportunities as well. This is an interesting question, and I think it will be related to both of you. Sometimes it is not because we love working, but require the income, especially after treatment has depleted financial resources that we require to go back and cannot afford too much of a pay cut, even with the potential discrimination? What evidence, document, or assistance do we need? I don't know. I was just wondering that in this case, sometimes we need to also compromise to take up jobs that might not be what we expect to get that kind of income, but to start at a different level so that you still get an income. And as Prof had mentioned earlier about the financial navigation, is to relook at expenses. So like when I retired, I relooked at my expenses to see when you're working, you don't really bother where your money goes in and goes out. But when you stop working, that's when you start thinking, how much is my electricity bill and my water bill? You know, where am I using more or less? You know, you start becoming more calculative. So I'm wondering, Prof, would there be something like that you will get to give to patients in the future?
I really hope so, because what we are saying is, while I had a very nice chat with this very senior person who used to work in a reinsuring company. So he was saying about how when his friend was diagnosed with cancer, he actually went in and asked him to bring what are the properties that he have, or what are the sources of finances he have, and he gave him some idea. Why don't you sell this, move into a smaller apartment? You are at a certain age, you don't have to own an apartment anymore. Maybe you can rent it and it still works out cheaper. So so what it means is, when we come here together, it's not just about, because I know when we talk about financial assistance, we are talking about people in the B40 group. They really deserve a lot of attention, but in that process we tend to, people who are in the middle class, people who are in a higher income bracket are also actually suffering. And these are people who could do advice of this sort, financial experts, financial advisors who can come and give this sort of advice. So that is what that I'm hoping to do. Like, it's not just a place panel people who are needy, who need financial assistance to be referred, but we also hope that people who have some money, how to best make use of the money. If you have a small property, how can you maximize and live the rest of your life really well, and all the means that you have. So that is what I'm looking forward to.
Thanks, Prof. Dr. Sri Ganesh, I come back to you on this issue. Have you had experience of anyone who had a higher position job, but after cancer came back to you and say, I don't mind compromising and getting something with a slightly lower salary, doesn't matter really?
Many,
Yeah.
a lot of patients, they don't mind. So it's because they have been challenged in a very it is a financial catastrophe that they are under. There are actually many patients within our pool. They have said that they are not looking according to their previous qualification or designation. As long as they're able to get a monthly wage, it's okay for them. So from a higher earning capacity, they are okay to lowering down their monthly wage.
Great. I think that's the reality of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also, I mean, if you're a high performer, then it's a different thing. But if you are thinking that your performance may be compromised, automatically financially it will be compromised as well. So we have somebody else asking, my organization, a local bank, has recently agreed to hire an employee who has declared breast cancer history. Would she be eligible for all the medical benefits, including cancer-related treatment? My HR does not mention any exclusion of such benefit in her employment letter. I think that really varies with the employers, right?
Yeah. It depends on the company that they subscribe to the insurance, who is covering the insurance for the particular company. So usually in most instances, when this sort of special cases occur, the insurance company will come out with this. It's not usually clearly outlined, but when they go and specifically pose that kind of questions, it won't come out in the offer letter, for instance. But they have to make that inquiry, and most of the time it will not cover things which are related to breast cancer recurrence and so on. And because if that happens, if they're going to be covered, the premium that the employer is going to pay on behalf of the patient is going to be very high. So to my knowledge, I think breast cancer care will not be covered. But that is something that they have to sit down and ask the HR, and not assuming that because it's not in the employment letter, usually that won't be in the employment letter.
So do not have any miscommunication. Have everything
Exactly.
clear.
Better be clear about it. Yes.
So is there any association that we can turn to for advice if our insurance claim gets declined?
For time being, I don't think any of the insurance companies offer that sort of services. So I think what is the best to do is, because often we talk about a lot of agents who, like are bad, but there are also people who are good. So one thing is can ask them, but if in this special instance where we are talking in this question, right, the best is to talk to the HR too, because the HR will be the one who will be dealing with the insurance company. So better ask them rather than going through, because we don't know what sort of package that the employer have bought from the insurance company.
I think in this case, Prof, this is nothing to do with, is there any association? This is nothing to do with jobs.
Oh, you are asking a general question,
Yes,
is that?
right, yeah.
So if that's, at the moment, none of the insurance companies offer this. So I had the opportunity to present to the Life Insurance Association Malaysia, and Liam and PM. They are two different organizations. One is covering life insurance and medical cards, and another one is when organizations buy insurance for the whole package. So they do not have such services at the moment. But when I asked them that if we were to start a program, are they willing to come and help us, set up such program and offer their expertise? They were very open. So I don't have answer like right now. If you ask there's any organization, no, there's no organization. Because Liam and PM, most of them, they are not offering this sort of services at the moment.
Okay, I can answer this question. Originally, even till today, Bank Negara has a complaints box that you can go to Bank Negara and get to the complaints box and put your complaint inside there. If you think that your insurance claim, according to your insurance original documents, you were supposed to get the claim and you got declined because for some reason, and that you followed all the rules, and you read all the fine print. The fine print in the insurance is what you need to read to make sure what are the exclusion areas. So if you read all that and you think that you're still being discriminated, you can put your complaint to Bank Negara, because they still do take complaint for insurance issues. Just to share, it is actually very real that discrimination starts the moment we declare our diagnosis, where colleagues and supervisors have determined that we are no longer fit for the job. I just think that I will prove to them that I'm fit for the job and do my work to show that I'm fit. Actually, it's doing yourself and performance. Your performance actually shows that you can do the job. If we keep showing ourselves as victims and I'm a cancer patient, then obviously you get treated like one. If you think that you are there as an employee and you're doing your work to the full potential, I don't think there should be an issue. I don't know. Would you all like to add in?
I would totally agree with you, Ms. Ranjit, regarding that. It's up to the patient who want to get back into the employment. But having said that, the atmosphere, the environment is still a lot more to be improved, especially in vocational rehabilitation. And I truly envision and hope that we could create a better pathway for these patients to return back to work in the future.
Dr. Sri Ganesh, there's a lot of education to be done to society, even to our family members who think we should stop working because stress causes breast cancer. There's so many misconceptions. And why wouldn't employers also don't want to employ us because they think that we will be more stressed out and our disease will get worse. So there's a lot of misconception going on out there in society as a whole. So I think there needs to be a paradigm shift, and that doesn't take place overnight. It takes a long time. Until many people get NCDs in the country, with the majority having NCDs, everybody will be employed. Because you won't have enough people. Prof, you want to say something about that?
No, actually, I was just looking at, we have missed the question along the way.
The one on hormone pills?
Yes.
Yeah, I've got that because I wanted to keep the momentum going on this same subject.
Okay.
I'll come back to that.
But I think one of the things
they
that
want to contact you.
Yeah.
Can I share my email address?
Yes, you can. You can put it in the chat box.
While Sri
Yes.
Ganesh is typing, we
Yeah.
were talking about this lack of knowledge and like the need for increasing awareness, because we also have this occupational rehabilitation. So I think one of the things have been done abroad is that you have these people who are working in this area, especially in hospitals. They want them to also work with employers where the patients are returning to work. Like, so when they are returning to work, they would like them to write, like how we expect doctors to give a clean bill of health. In abroad, what happens is the occupational therapies works and try to come up with some bill to say that this person is good to go back to work. And those are things that they have been pushing for in low and middle income countries in other settings. That's something that we might want to see. So it's not just about the oncologists, it's about the rehab team that patients are working with.
So being fit to return to work, and I think that is a very important issue.
Yeah.
And occupational therapists can play a very important role there.
We had conducted a series of qualitative discussion. We had focus group discussions with patients, and one of the themes that we were talking about is employment. So a lot of our patients actually said one of the biggest issues is this dealing with not only physical side effects but also side effects that affect their mental capability, that people sometimes they don't remember as well before, or things like that. So those kind of things, right? Things that have been done elsewhere is workplace adaptation. So these are things that, for instance, again, occupational therapies or NGOs can work with the employers. These kind of things are low hanging fruits. What we need is to get the employers to understand that they need to have a place to rest, like a lot of flexibility that can be given. And this time where we have the pandemic and people have been working at home is a good example, like it can be a blessing in disguise as well, because people finally realize that yes, people can work at home and in fact be more productive than they come to work. So working from home, having a place to rest in the workplace, those are the things that actually helps a lot of people with cancer to catch up, and when they're feeling tired and stressed. So I hope that instead of just saying the pandemic is bad, there are also many good aspects of the pandemic that can be leveraged for people who are living with chronic disease. And this is an example. The employers need to realize that not all things that, when dealing with people with cancer, not everything is bad. All you need is to be a bit more, flexible, and you will have full productivity from all your employees.
And that's absolutely right. And we also advise people to have like cat naps from time to time to reduce the fatigue effects and such things. And also sometimes talking to your colleagues and talking to your employers to inform them about what you're going through, what are the good and bad part of it, so that they understand that we're all balanced human beings. We just not always suffering, but there are times when we enjoy life, and there are times when we work, and there are times just like everybody else. We have this question on hormone therapy. Drugs like aromatase inhibitors are very expensive and have to take them on long-term basis. Where can we get cheaper drugs? Prof, can I give this to you?
I was just about to say that, this sort of questions are something that you actually should be talking to the oncology, the treating teams, because to say that where can we get cheaper drugs, it really depends on whether there are generic drugs available, right? If the generic drugs are not available, then, the other option is to go through agencies and NGOs like Magna or Breast Cancer Foundation, for instance. But it depends. Like, for instance, if you want to get help from organizations like Magna, you have to be in the B40 group. So otherwise, you might not be able to get it. But there are also, like the things that I put up, those private other organizations, you may try, saying that you can't afford, but you must say why. What you have to have some sort of a paper to support your application. But otherwise, if you're just asking whether there are other cheaper drugs that you want to pay out of pocket, the best person to ask will be your treating team.
Yeah, I agree with that. That your oncologist could be the one to advise you, or even change your drug accordingly, so that it still gives you the same benefit as the expensive drug that you have been given. I think that we have to the end of our session, and there are lots of thank yous going on for both of you. We were wondering whether you would like to say a few last words for the session. Prof, would you like to be the first one to go?
Oh, thank you so much, Ranjit, for this opportunity. And most of the times when we join these sort of sessions, right, when we have face-to-face, we have less questions. And I like this because in a webinar, I see that people are less shy to ask questions. And I'm very, very pleased to have answered many questions. Maybe some of the questions may have not been, directly what you wanted. But I encourage that if you would like to get in touch, then please do get in touch. I'm also going to type my email address here. And so thanks a lot for listening. And please take back this need for financial navigation. So next time, if someone is going to ask you, what do you need? Like, how can you be better off? Just rather than just asking about more money for drugs. And of course, all those things are important, but try to get something beyond. So financial navigation is something that I think we also want the end users to ask for it. So when people start asking for it, then people like the policymakers will be like, what? Financial navigation? What is financial navigation? So we want to have that word to be mentioned very, very often. So when people start asking, then we say, hey, yeah, we are trying to do financial navigation. And Ranjit, I'm looking forward to do this together with NCSM and all the other organizations and patient support.
Really glad that all the NGOs come into the picture for this project. Dr. Sri Ganesh, would you like to say some words to conclude?
Ms. Ranjit, for the wonderful opportunity. I think a great chance for me to, for us to educate and share these information to our patients. And as Prof aptly mentioned, that we need the volume of patients for us to speak to the policymakers. I still remember we went to the finance ministry about the tax. We went in a big team of like 20 of us, and obviously only 2 of you all are coming. They were like shocked. We went in a big team. We thought, yes, we are going to do it. We're going to get the double taxation this time. But somehow it got delayed, and it never turned out. But we are still not going to give up. We hope to address the many challenges, especially on survivorship. Cancer survivorship is a huge is a huge umbrella, many components under that. And as we have spoken in depth, there are so much of work to be done, and I'm eager to be part of if any way that I could contribute. I would be more than happy to help out in any way.
And we from BCW would love to work with both of you, because these are very exciting areas that you're working on, because it's beyond treatment, it's during treatment, it's life still has to go on for us. And just to let you know, about 70 people actually participated in this session today. So thank you very much. We would now like to have everybody come forward together with the speakers, because we're going to get everybody's faces coming up to see all of you. Can I see all the faces? Yes, great. Can we give them a big hand? Can you all clap and thank them for the talk?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to the speakers.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.